David Cassidy, as we know, is a multi-talented actor, singer, songwriter, and musician. David began his career very early, acting on Broadway in 1969 in the musical The Fig Leaf Are Falling. His TV character acting took off from there with roles in Ironside, Marcus Welby, M.D., Bonanza, and 12. In 1970, he began his role as Keith Partridge. His part in the popular sitcom The Partridge Family, alongside his stepmother Shirley Jones. The show ran for 4 years with Cassidy on vocals. The show produced many charted hits, including the 1970s anthem I Think I Love You, putting in at #1 on Billboard's Top 100 in November of 1970. He simultaneously toured, bringing his concerts worldwide, including Japan, Holland, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia. He completed a successful recording career, releasing 4 albums on Bell Records and 3 more on RCA, being hailed as his best work. Home is where the heart is, the higher they climb, and getting it in the street. 1978 brought him an Emmy nomination with an episode on Police Story, A Chance to Live. This spawned his television series, David Cassidy, Man Undercover. He continued his acting from 1980 to 2013 in TV roles and continued to write music as well as tour worldwide. 1985 brought him continued success with his artistic release of the album Romance, with the song The Last Kiss, charting #6 in the UK. George Michael did backing vocals. In 1990, David returned to charting the American Top 40 with his single Lying to Myself on Name Records. In 1998, he had an adult contemporary hit with No Bridge I Wouldn't Cross. He continued working in the theater as well, starring in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Little Johnny Jones, Iron Blood Brothers. David had huge success in this city, starring FX and MGM Grand from 1996 to 1998. At the Copa, at the video show he created and co-produced beginning in 2000, and the Las Vegas stage show, The Rat Pack is Back, from 1999 to 2002. I met David at The Rat Pack is Back in 1999. I will tell you a quick story about my meeting David Cassidy. He invited me to go to the show at the Riviera, okay? And it had just opened. And I went there and I sat in a booth and I was waiting for David Cassidy to show up. And right as the show started, he showed up, sat next to me. He was all dressed up in a tuxedo. And he was sitting there, and in the script of the show, the Frank Sinatra character, played by Bobby Caldwell, I believe, said, I got a guy in the crowd who's got a new song, I want him to come up and sing it. And David bounded up and went to the stage and sang Mac the Knife. He came back and sat down and nothing happened. We had a song in the FX, a song at the Copa. And I interviewed him many times. In my experience with David, one thing about David that I learned was how proud he was of his whole career. He was such a monster musician. He was such a great guitarist. And he really was, at that period of his life, was really excited about playing guitar. He was really good. He also hosted at MGM Grand at Hollywood Theater a retrospective on the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album, because he was friends with John Lennon. Back in his chart topping days. David Cassidy sang more music than John Lennon was when they met. And George Martin was giving the presentation, and David introduced George Martin. And that was a very cool moment. David was great. He was so great that night. So it's an honor for me to be up here and speaking on his behalf. And relaunching the Walk of Stars in Las Vegas also. It's very important for our community to have this, have the stars reorganized and go in the right direction again. And it's appropriate that David Starr is the one that is helping us do that. For his success, his charitable work, and for all the happiness he brought to others. This honor was achieved by fan donations from all over the world to Dave's Cassidy, and his fans made it possible. So thank you. And we have some speakers. First of all, the broadcasting mastermind behind the hit show The Zone, and a longtime friend of David's, Timm McCoy.
Hello, Cassidians. Not going to take up too much of your time. I have to catch a plane and I have to leave at 3, so I'm going to be quick. Thanks. I've known David for 27 years, starting in 1990. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be able to speak on his birthday in a place he loved so much. I am Timm McCoy, and either I was blessed by God, touched by the hand of fate, or just one of the luckiest SOBs on the planet, but I'll always be grateful for encountering the soul named David Cassidy. Because of David, I became a musician, an artist, an actor, a director, and a better human being for the past 50 years. I am one of thousands of us that have had a life-changing moment when we welcomed him into our lives. Back on August 22nd, 1990, I was a DJ at WKSR Radio at Kent State University. On that day, I was to have a live phone interview with David and talk of his new album, the self-entitled David Cassidy. And by the way, it was not a comeback album. He said I never went anywhere. Between song cuts, we started to learn a lot about each other. Some of it personal, but not too deep. And wow, I was blessed by God. A little over a year later, I flew to Miami, Florida, and rented a car to drive to Key West, Florida, and visit a friend of mine. And I was passing through West Palm Beach where I noticed a marquee outside of a pub, said David Cassidy live at the Carefree Theater that night, September 29th, 1991. This was the first time that we met face to face, and I introduced myself to him, and his lights lit up like a Christmas tree. It was amazing to see the response. And again, wow, touched by the hand of fate. I continued my journey to visit my friend in Key West, Florida, and then returned to Cleveland a couple of days later after my visit and had a phone call instructing me to grab my camera and my microphone and set up for an interview at the Empire Concert Club in downtown Cleveland. This was on October 2nd, 1991. I walked into the building at 11 a.m. He wasn't going to go on stage till 8 or 9. So I walked into the building, and before I could even do anything, I hear a voice from the dressing room in the back going, "Is that the lightning bug?" That was my DJ name at Kent State. It's amazing you remember that. So I said, "Yes, it is me." And he turned to me and said, "So, you're a stalker now?" He gave me a big hand hug. And so I set up the equipment and prepped him for the interview. And sure enough, again, I was the luckiest SOB on the planet. After the interview with Wilma Smith from WEWS TV News, he said, "Do I call you Bug?" I said, "Can I call you Dave?" He said, "How about McCoy?" I said, "How about Hopalong?" He said, "How about Timmy?" That was the deliverer. I said, "How about Adam 11?" Yeah. He laughed so hard, he started spitting 7-Up out of his nose. It was an incredible sight to see. He started back to his dressing room, which was about the average size of a New York apartment, about 7 by 4. And he said to me, "Would you like to hang out and spend the day and see the show tonight?" I said, "If you don't mind." He said, "Well, sure, you're good company, go ahead." Before his first break, I was in the dressing room with none other than Danny Bonaduce. And so I looked at the chair, and there was David's leather jacket. You know, the one that's got all the metal all over it, okay, the fringe and everything. Which was, and I'm not kidding, about 25 pounds. At the time, David was no more than 130. And I found out later the reason why he wore that jacket was so he could come out, sweat like a dog, and then take it off and relax. And he felt light, and that's the way his music was. So I put the jacket on, and it's kind of heavy, and I get a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it was David. He said, "Excuse me, Mr. Cassidy, you need a towel?" And so I was really embarrassed about this, and so he said, "Okay, how about I just call you friend?" And Danny said, "You two get a room." We did meet one more time in July 4th, 2006 in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was at the Taste of Minnesota Festival, and I was with my now wife, Joe. And she never seen my relationship with David. And she's kind of blown away. Most people are when you tell them that. And at times I don't tell them that because I want them to like me for me, not for knowing David. And as a side note, back in 1991, I had a walk-on part for Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 23, I board. I played board right at the end of the show. And Gates McFadden got me that job. And I just thought it was an incredible opportunity. I interviewed her, and then she wound up getting me the job. But I was seen right at the end of the episode, a completely different story for a different time. So from the stage, I am 4 deep, and David's up on the stage giving everything he got. And he turns and sees me in the audience, and totally delighted because I'm his favorite stalker. And all he could do was drop the microphone so no one can hear it, looked straight at me and said, "You're a board now?" Board. I have the head for boredom. Anyway, if I had to define my relationship with David, just read the lyrics for the song "Being Together." All my life, growing up as a child, was abuse. David understood my pain because he asked me how I felt. And so I talked to him about pain, relationships. He even gave me some unreleased music, which I still had not released, because I told him I would not. And we kept in touch by letters for the longest time. And I decided when I write a book about David, and all these stories in detail, and there's some others, that I'm going to put the letters that he wrote to me too. Because part of that was a side of David no one has seen. When he is being personal with you, when he was being direct to you, he was the most honest human being I've ever encountered. And it tears me up that he's not here. He would have loved today. So every day I am thankful for the 27 years that I spent with him. And by the way, we were both 5'8" in 1990. And since his passing, we are now 5'6". I blame him. He's a beautiful human being. When I use the word groovy, which I still do today, that's David Cassidy. He was groovy.
Absolutely, yes.
David deserved today.
Yes, he did.
When he was a worldwide phenomenon, people never credited him for his talent. And those of us who've experienced him and seen him and know him and love him knows he belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And big for everything I know. It is so bizarre to stand here in front of icons, legends, actors, celebrities, and me. And I guess I represent everyone who had a personal connection to David. And I miss him so much. The last thing he ever said to me was, they might not remember who you are, but I always will. Thank you.
Okay, couple corrections. It was 1991. And I was not a band member, I was a music director, but we weren't supposed to say that I was a music director because it was supposed to be a rock band. But I did, I was responsible for bringing some really good people who will be, one of whom will be speaking later. Well, I hope you both are. Kelli and Gruman. This was the tour when David was coming back, regaining his credibility. He had just had the tune Living, Lying Myself, thank you. I knew it started with Ella. And I come to David Cassidy from a kind of a different standpoint than a lot of you people, especially the fans, because I was in a band in the late 80s with Bill Mooney, who played in Lost in Space, and also he was the kid in the Twilight Zone that sent people to the cornfield. And two other TV stars, Miguel Ferrer, the late Miguel Ferrer, unfortunately, as is the late David Cassidy, and David Jolliffe, who played Bernie, the redheaded kid in Room 222. So I was the only non-famous member of that band, but Some of the people who would come and jam with us was Sean Cassidy, David's half-brother, who's an amazing guy, and an incredible talented Cassidy, who not everyone knows as Patrick. And so David was going to go out on tour, so he was looking for somebody to lead the band, and so Billy recommended me to David. Now, this is 1990s, but when the Partridge Family was on, it was about, what, early, mid-70s, right? I was a theater student in college. I was not watching sitcoms. I was not interested in that kind of music. I was much hipper than that. So I get this job to do this, and of course I'm going to go on the road because it's going to be great. It's going to be really fun. But I didn't really know David's music, except for, of course, everybody in the world knew I Think I Love You, and everybody in the world knew the big hits. But I didn't really know the depth of how talented he was, and how much, at the age of about 40, when I started working with him, he still had it. And he would come out there and he would rock. Well, you can apply for that for sure. And he still had all his hair, which I was just beginning to lose. Matt still has his hair, so that's good. But there, Michael Pomarico, who I think is speaking later, brought me some pictures from way back then, and I had long hair. The hairline was moving back a little bit, but one of the reasons I hired Matt and Kelli, besides that they are very, very talented, is that I knew the tour wanted to save money and they could both stay in the same room. So that was good.
I knew that was the reason.
What's that?
I knew that was the reason.
Hey, you better keep your mouth shut. I had some pictures of you, Matt, from the tour. So I'm thinking, okay, I was happy to have the gig, and so I thought, well, yeah, it's going to be probably people in their 40s and 50s and stuff like that. It was people of all ages. It was amazing. It was amazing. There were young people, there were kids, there were older people, there were, hip people, We wound up jamming. I mean, I'll just say a couple of the highlights. We did, when we were in New York, we did the Geraldo show, in which Danny Bonaducci was on tour with us. If you don't think that's chaotic, he had just been arrested. Any of you who are fans know why, I won't go into it. But, so we had a little trouble getting into Canada when we were playing Kitchener, Ontario, because he was on parole. And he had just gotten married to this new wife who made sure that it was trying to keep him away from anything temptation. Any temptation, anything. She wouldn't let him talk to atheists. She was trying to keep him on the straight and narrow. I don't think verbally he ever was, but I think he did straighten his life out. And we had a lot of fun with him. He opened every show that we did. And during the time for me, just to tell you a little personal note, when we started rehearsals, we were rehearsing at a place called SIR in Los Angeles, and we had a great band. Unfortunately, I understand that Ronnie Zulu, who was then named Ronnie Beck, is not here. Just a beautiful bass player, great guy, just incredibly fun. And the other musician was Matt. Bobby Huff. Bobby Huff, who was a relation to Dan Huff, who was an incredible musician and producer. And Bobby eventually became a really great record producer in Nashville. But they were both really young, and we just had so much fun with them. In fact, in a hotel room someplace in Sun City, Ronnie gave me the earring that I had by doing the lighting the needle and sticking it through the ear and putting the thing in there. So that was really fun. But we did the Geraldo show. We did Regis and Kathy Lee. All this stuff is on YouTube. So if you want to check any of it out. We did that. We went up to Kitchener, Ontario. Went to Chicago. We jammed at the Hard Rock with Mick Taylor.
That's right.
And what's that? That is right. No, not the Park West Hotel. The Park West was a venue. Yeah, it's a big venue. We stayed at the Palmer House, actually. So, And then when we got done with that, we were on a tour bus. Everything was really fun about that whole tour, except for this one road guy who used to smoke while we were driving all night to one place. So the vocalists were not happy about that. But other than that, Victor, the road manager, was a wonderful, wonderful guy. Everybody was so sweet and nice, and we had such a good time. And then we did it all over again for the West Coast. We played Victoria Island. Did you see it on the West Coast? Oh, fabulous! Yeah, that was a great theater. That was really fun. So we played Victoria. We played Vancouver, Club Soda in Vancouver. If anybody's Canadian, eh? So we did that. And then we came down, back down to LA, and we did Santa Cruz, and I can just tell you, it was one of the most fun times of my life. I really loved working with David. I loved working with Matt and Kelli, and I had to leave because I was working in TV and film and stuff like that, so I couldn't stay with the tour. But what happened is then Matt became his music director and worked for him for a long time, and you're going to really get the benefit of a lot of the David Cassidy experiences through Matt and Kelli, two of my favorite people in the world. But anyway, I'm very grateful to Carolyn and everyone who asked me to be here, and I just want to say, I guess all the love you guys have for David Cassidy really, really comes through, and I'm really honored and grateful to be a part of that. And thank you.
Musician, music director, production manager, recording artist who plays guitar, upright bass, electric bass, and toured worldwide with David from 2002 to 2016. Please welcome Frank Fabio.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for David Cassidy! I just had to do that one more time. Thank you so much for inviting me, everyone. It's been a pleasure to see these faces again. You don't know how much I missed every one of you. The faces. And this is a great honor that David would have been so happy about. You know, one day I mentioned to him that many of us have been writing to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on his behalf. And I'm sure many of you have done it already. And he looked at me and just said, as long as Chubby Checker doesn't get nominated, I'll never be nominated. So somehow he knew the inner politics of show business a lot better than I did. But I want to thank also and speak for the many musicians from Las Vegas and around the country who David kept working for many years. His many shows here, hundreds of musicians have worked. He made work for it, and he was conscious of that too. He was a musician himself, and he wanted to take care of other musicians. So, on behalf of the musicians, as we walk down the strip and we see that star, we're going to be very thankful to and remember the good things that he did for all of us. As far as the fans are concerned, I can tell you one thing for sure. He loved you. He loved the fans and he really cared. There was times when he wasn't feeling so great, and he always gave 100%, 150%. And I'll tell you, when you see him in the back afterwards, he was drained. But as he was on stage and he saw everyone's faces, he gave everything that he had. And that's one thing we should always remember. And the last thing, I'm not going to speak too long because there's many stories, funny, not funny, but his message, I believe, is the same as his friends Ringo Starr, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. He came from the peace and love era, and his underlying message was always peace and love. So let's try to continue that in all of our lives. And by continuing his love and peace and love message. And hopefully someday we can play the music again for you. We don't know if there will be the chance arises, but we still know the songs, believe us. And to the wonderful people and all of you who donated and put this thing together, we all thank you, and I'm sure David thanks you up there. And thanks for inviting me again. Nice to see your faces. And we love you all. Thank you.
Up next, concert and theater producer, actor, director, Partridge family aficionado, and author of When We're Singin', Johnny Ray Miller.
Cherish really is the word, isn't it? Wow, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you all. Thank you so much to the committee who worked so hard to put all of this together. And to be here is the greatest honor I could ever dream of. When I think back, I wanted to talk a little bit about David's music and maybe take a little bit further insight into what Frank just said about David's message. I really believe that David Cassidy told us who he was through his music. He was an artist, and he communicated that to us over and over and over again. I believe in weird coincidences that are not really coincidences, right? David Cassidy died on November 21st, 2017. Do you know what day that was? That was the day I Think I Love You hit #1. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I feel like that means something. And as I think back through his many albums, you know, on top of 10 Partridge family albums, he had 13 solo studio albums, and that doesn't count greatest hits albums, live albums, MP3 download albums, concert albums. He accomplished so much, and I feel as though he stood up on that stage over 650 times in concert, and that's just the concerts. That's not all of the stage performances. And how many times did he reach out to that front row and sing to you and shake your hand and our hands and, you know, that interpersonal thing? He really reached out to us. And what I realized about all of this, and the other night, and fan night, and standing up and singing and dancing, is it's our turn to do this now. It's up to us now to carry it on. You know, he gave us all this music, and he, for all of us in this room, right, he's one of our, the great icons of our childhood. He affected us in ways that people don't understand when it comes to David Cassidy, but everybody has that experience, I believe. And for us, you know, David Cassidy gave us not only great music that we grew with through the years, and we grew with him, but innocence. That still to this day, right, whenever we have heartache or whenever we need to mentally check out or whatever it is, we're so fortunate that we had innocence in the beginning, and then we rode along the ride with him. That's how I feel about this. So we had Cherish, you know, which was the first album, and there was a lot of innocence to that album. Cherish brought out so many great songs. His second album, Rock Me Baby, right? It's a next step album, it's a transitional album. Again, he tells us who he is in this music. So I think he wanted us at some point to, you know, put down the tiger beat and listen to the music. You know, and we did. music is so great. He recorded so many great artists. He wrote so many great songs. His third album, Dreams Are Nothing More Than Wishes, a big fan favorite. What I think is so significant on that album, as it applies here today, is Bally High. Bally High from the Broadway musical South Pacific, which, by the way, Shirley Jones had a little small part in right before she got her contract to go on and do Oklahoma. Again, weird coincidences, but Bally High, he showed us range. He also told us a little bit about his childhood, his memories of his father, and that song was also very important to his mother. Beautiful, beautiful song on that album, an album that he finally got to do what he wanted it to do, that defined who he was at that time. And that ended the Bell Records era, and the Partridge Family era, and then he went on to get his contract with RCA and do 3 albums there. He often talked about the higher they climb, the harder they fall. And all of us in this room, can hear him say it was semi-autobiographical, tongue-in-cheek. He said that so many times. And for today, the piece of that album I'd like to kind of point out is something called Massacre at Park Bench, right? So in the middle of the album, this guy does a skit. He does what an actor does. He shows his acting side, and he performs for us on the album in a skit, an improvised thing, halfway through the album about a pop star fallen by the wayside, and he showed us how he could poke fun at himself. I just think that is foreshadowing as to where he eventually went, especially as it applies to us today here in Las Vegas. The next album, Home Is Where the Heart Is, the second of the 3. For some reason, I just want to mention this one song. I don't know why it just jumps into my head all the time. It's called Damned If This Ain't Love. I think that's what he would say, looking at all of you here. That album is often considered his greatest album. We all have our different fan favorites. The third album from RCA then, Getting It in the Street. I gotta tell you a little story about this one. I had interviewed Dave Robichaud for my next project, and I asked him the question, of all of David Cassidy's songs from his solo career, what song would you say best defined him? And he said, Jump Tart Blues. Yeah, and so, Jump Tart Blues is a song David wrote on his own, and I always, I think we all connected with that song when we heard it. He had this way of connecting to us. Jump Tart Blues, and sitting around trying to figure out life, sitting around trying to escape life, sitting around trying to talk to other people and get through life. That's what I get from that song. So for me, those RCA albums really were like the first great round of him giving us what he wanted to give us and telling us who he was through the lyrics of that music and the people he worked with. Going on from there, I'll jump right into, we have fans here from Australia and the UK, and so over there, right, you got Romance. And the hit, The Last Kiss, he was back on the charts, number 6 in Britain. That song in his relationship with George Michael, who sang backup on that song. That was a great song, and then the record company had trouble, and he had a lot of problems through the years, a lot of bad luck, actually, with the record companies. Just, right when he'd be, moving up the charts and back in the limelight, the internal politics would cause a problem. So the other half of his great comeback, sorry Tim, I'm using comeback, but the other half of it, it's hitting America in 1990 with the self-titled David Cassidy album. I'm lying to myself. So just to pick out one song out there that I just want to mention is the first song on it called Labor of Love. That song grabbed me. I took a midnight bus to New York to meet David the day that album came out and buy the album at Sam Goody's. And that song tells us about forgiveness and the need to forgive, and the challenge in forgiving. And we all know the struggle he had in his relationship with his father. Getting it in the street, the lyric coming out of that song was dark and angry, and it was about his father, and he told us that. By 1990, he's talking about forgiveness. And so, again, telling us who he was through that music, I feel like, again, telling us, put down the poster and pick up that album, because that's where I'm at. I'm in that music. And then Frank, oh man, Didn't You Used to Be, and talking about peace and love. And David once said his song from that album, Whatever Happened to Peace, Love, and Happiness. He said everything that I ever believed politically and socially is right there. So it's there for all of us to have, to embrace. And then by the late 90s, here he was in Vegas. In the middle of Vegas, he does an album, Old Trick New Dog.
Yeah.
For the very first time, he re-records and rearranges I Think I Love You,
Yeah.
which I feel, again, shows us his evolution of the embracing of his past and his future, where he was musically, who he was, and where he was going. And here in Vegas, man, the records that he was voted Best Singer. He revamped the show, and 4 months later, MGM actually credited him for bringing in over 1 million people. They solely credited him for doing that. So, his accomplishments here in Vegas is unmistakable, and he deserves this star more than anything I could ever imagine or want to wish for him. This star here in Vegas more than anywhere. I feel he was very proud of his work here in Vegas. And then right after the Vegas era was over, 2002, he's out on the road again, and we meet the great Fabio, and the band that went out, and these guys, a lot of us went around and saw many of those concerts, and I missed those concerts. It almost became a habit to go see a David Cassidy concert, right? For so many of us. David touched our lives in so many ways, and he did it really through that music. I hope that you will always remember him through the music and to be among this great, incredible slate of speakers. Thank you so very much.
The iconic gold record recording artist and 1960s singing group, the Cowsills, were the inspiration. The inspiration for the Partridge Family. The 76 sitcom. Their chart-topping hits include, to this day, The Rain, The Park and Other Things, Hair, I Love the Flower Girl, and Indian Lake. And the project introduced Susan, Bob, and Paul.
Hey, thanks everybody. We want to thank Carolyn and Lynn both for making sure that we knew this was happening. We could have easily missed this, and that would have been a drag because, the Partridge Family has meant so much to our life. The three of us, we've always said that, with no Cowsills, no Partridge Family, but we took that a step further and said, without the Partridge Family, there'd be no Cowsills. Because we were having kids, we were raising those children, and we were pretty much out of sight through our trip through music, and so we were hiding at the time. And the Partridge Family kept churning and churning it out. And so I would always tell everybody, God bless them for being a great show, and God bless David. And the crazy thing is, guys, we never met David. I know, you guys have all these incredible stories. We've met Danny and Shirley, who've been so sweet to us, exactly. And but we are just really happy to be here, happy that we were able to be a part of this, because we are synonymous with them and they are synonymous with us. And I would just like to do a poem. I'm sleeping, and right in the middle of a dream, and all at once I wake up from something that keeps knocking at my brain.
That's cool. Paul sings that song in the Cowsills show. So he's been doing that for years, actually. So I'm the little sister, you can call me Tracy. Now.
Sorry, Tracy.
So obviously we go way back with the Partridges. I would like to bring you all to the premiere that we were all brought to in 1970, 69. What was the year it came out again? Okay, so it was 69, and the pilot was done, and they wanted to show the Cowsills, the pilot. So we all went to this on a lot. Remember that? Yeah, and we had an earthquake that day while we were there, but we still got to see the show, and I just remember sitting with Barry and John, who would be Danny and, what was the little dude's name? Chris. Right, we know this, yeah. And we're watching the show, you know, and then there it is. There they are traveling along, and there's the mom, and I'm looking at mom, and mom, there they are. And all of a sudden, Barry and I look at each other, and we're like, wait a minute. Are you the redhead? I was like, am I the other redhead? Because we have black hair, we Cowsills. So we kids are just trying to understand what's happening in front of us as kids. Can you imagine?
I was Susan Day.
Yeah, and then that was confusing, but we worked through that. And look, you guys, we had two David Cassidys. We had Bob and Bill. And they were like the older brother guy. And a little funny thing I'd like to share with you all. You noticed that the Partridges did not have a dad. It's very sad for them. I hear he passed away. But they had Reuben, and God bless Reuben, right? So I'm watching a TV show one night, and I'm watching a Partridge Family documentary. These two guys show up in it. I'm like, oh, there's Bobby Ball. But the dude who wrote it said, this is scary. They wrote my dad, they killed my dad off because he was such a pain in the butt to work with. Okay, so go to Sherwood Forest or whatever that dude's name is. Okay, so I get over the fact that the young lady they picked is not the most rhythmic percussionist I've ever watched. I'm okay with that. She's an actress. It's okay, I love Suzanne. Suzanne, they're making that band up there. Yeah, we love Suzanne Crowe. Everybody give it up for Suzanne. Okay, so no, you don't know David, but we went to school with the Brady Bunch, some of us. And Maureen McCoy was my pal. And she knew and hung out with Danny. She also knew that at this present time in history, there was a little bit of between the Partridges and the Cowsills, not the Cowsills and the Partridges. So she says to me, let's do something really fun. Let's go over to Danny Bonaducci's house, and I'll go knock on the door, and then I'll present you. And I'm like, wait, who's having the fun? Because it sounds like she's the one going to have the fun, and Danny and I are getting pumped. Like, mostly Danny, because I know what's happening. Sorry. So I said, let's do this. We can't leave his liquor store and drove up to Danny's house. And she got out, was knocked on the door. Bonaducci opens the door, sitting there, we're like down the path. I'm in a car. She makes him walk all the way down to the car. He bends over and looks at me and he goes, is that a Cowsill? She went, yes! She was so proud of her. I'm like, hi, I'm your joke. And he's like, and he turned and went, fuck you, Mo. Just telling you what happened, guys. This is a true story. And she goes, okay, here you go. And she, there, and off we went. So that's the only Partridge I ever met at the time. Y'all remember Jeremy Gelbach? Jeremy lives in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I live, and I see him all the time, and he sends his love. And last but not least, I would like to register a complaint with my oldest brother, Bill, and that is that he used to conduct rehearsals on Friday evenings around 8 o'clock. what went on that night, everyone. And I'm sitting there just going, can we finish this rehearsal so I can go watch us on TV? And that was my life in a nutshell.
That probably happened once. And then, later in life, it happened all the time.
Now, our oldest brother Bob, to give you his perspective, but listen, the bottom line is that when you grow up the way we did, and you have a very unique situation that we had, those people become your family. They have been our family forever, that's why we're here. I'm calling Shirley when I get home to tell her exactly what happened.
Isn't it great to hear these stories and learn a lot about David that you never knew? Some things, of course, from the people that really know. But the strength of David is very powerful because I did have a relationship with David Cassidy, even though I never met him. That's how strong the dude was. Because, like Paul said, when our star was waning, the Partridge family arrived, and in the early, look, these people came to our house in Santa Monica thinking we kids could be the kids on the show. But it was always going to be a Shirley Jones vehicle. So they weren't going to want our mom. And look, we were living the life of recording and touring. And we're teenagers. And so we're going, well, why do we want to add Monday through Friday TV show job to that life? Because we're not looking for fame or fortune. We're living good, the tourist. What, the TV show, what? So it got turned down. We would have done it if we were told, but it got turned down from our perspective, and we just went, and they went and found, what do you know? Okay?
Yeah.
So, why does she want to put it in the next one? All right, what?
I did forget to tell you that when these screengems came out to visit the Cowsills, because it was our show in the beginning, when they realized that the boys were at an awkward age, they did want still to be in the cast of the Partridge family. Myself as me, and my brother Barry as Bonaducci.
Are you done? Okay, they like the little girl. Who doesn't like the little girl, okay? But as now their show's taking off, and in all the interviews, they're going through the Q&A. Hey, is this really about the Cowsills? Because they wanted mom and we heard when they come to the house, hey, we've got this idea for a show, we're going to put a mom on the band, we're going to put you on the bus, we're going to do that. That's the last 5 years. But David, here's my relationship with David. From that, in those years, those early years of the powerful presence of the Partridge family on television, inevitably, if you think, hey, yeah, remember the Cowsills? No, not really. Oh, I love the flower. No. Yeah, give me a head repair. But the last thing we could always say is, hey, you know the Partridge family? And they got, of course. Well, that was based on our life. And they go, you're kidding. You go, no, it's true. The mom, and they go, which one were you? And I couldn't get the words David Cassidy out of my mouth. That's my relationship with him. It's true. So we love him. We met Shirley later. She did our documentary, and we had a long interview with her. She told us all about what it was like when they all showed up the first day. And I even asked her, hey, Shirley, have you heard about us? And she said no. And I said, that's okay, we didn't know. We were, but we found out, about Shirley. So big guy in our family, Barry. Barry was Danny. So we fell in love with Danny. We got to know him a little bit. And David was just, look, David would have done what he did, if not more, without the Partridge family. Seriously. Now he was kind of Saturday. Well, we relate to that kind of image kind of thing where you got to prove yourself. Everything's an audition. Oh my God. Hey, we're the real deal. No, we are. No, you are. David did that,
So he would have done well. On his own, he would have been a star. I truly believe that. But the Partridge family stuck with a little label, you know, that had to kind of fight a little and fight for recognition at a level he felt he deserved and that you think he deserved and what we think he deserved. And there's a lot of artists like that, you know, so that's okay really, because they usually get their due in the long run.
Because of people like you.
Yeah. So thanks for having us. We couldn't make the same thing. All right? Thank you.
Up next, the actor, writer, director, composer, and Grammy-nominated CD producer who appeared in multiple Partridge Family episodes and was a personal friend of David. Please welcome Bruce Kimmel.
What a treat to be here. Thank you for having me and asking me to be here, and also listening to these great stories. A huge Cowsills fan when I was a child. So I'll just tell you a couple of things. I'll be as quick as Timm was. First of all, I did not understand a single word Gary Stockdale said. So maybe somebody can translate for me. I have known Gary Stockdale since he was what were you? A year or two younger than me. As was David. But Gary went to Los Angeles City College, and if my memory serves, I sort of got him into music. Is that not true? Because he wanted to be an actor, and I knew that was not going to be happening. So he music directed a show I wrote, right? He sat up in the thing, and we did the thing. Anyway, I'll just share with you, you know, I adore David, and I knew him a long time. So I'll just tell you a bit how I got the first episode. I was a young-ish actor, just starting out in television, and I got, at the end of December of 1970, I got my first guest shot on a show called The Young Lawyers, and then right after, literally 2 weeks later, I got a pilot for CBS that was a spin-off of the Doris Day Show, and right after that, I was asked to audition for the Partridge Family. I knew nothing about the Partridge Family. I'd never seen the Partridge. I knew Shirley Jones was in it, and I had a big old boy crush on Shirley Jones from when I was little, and the music man. So I was excited to go. So in those days, not like today. Today there would be like 50 actors up for this one scene role, and you would have to go to the network and read for the casting director. None of that. It was 5 actors, of which I was one, and you would go in and read for the producer. And the writer, Dylan Craven, was there. Mel Swope was directing it. And so I went in, and I was, I'm not going to say cocky, but I had just done 2 big things, so I was feeling my oats. And I just remember looking at people in the waiting room, I go, you're not getting this. And one of the people who were in the waiting room had my name. It was an actor named Joel Kimmel. And I have an actual brother named Joel Kimmel, but anyway, he turned into a writer. And so I went in and read and laughed, and I got it. And I got the show. And I didn't know what that meant, and I will tell you, I arrived at 6, this is a funny story for me, but I arrived at 6:30 at the Columbia Ranch, where they shot in Burbank. And I pulled it, and in those days, it's all crazy now, I don't even recognize it, but in those days, on Oak, you pulled into the main gate. And there was no security, there was no walls, it was a little house that a guard was in. And so I pull out, and there's these like 25 teenage girls at the gate. And I, of course, think they're waiting to see me. And I'm going, I don't know how you guys knew I was coming here. And of course, the 2 shows I had done hadn't aired. So and I realized, oh, it's David Cassidy. Of course, they're here to see David Cassidy. So I was taken to makeup and doing my trailer and whatever, and then I went on the stage to do this scene. And they just, you don't meet people, they just throw you into the set. And so I meet Susan Day, and I meet Shirley, if you've read my book, you know. I met Shirley, and then the bulk of the scene was with David on the couch. And so I guess I was trying to go out with Laurie, and he was going to tell me what not to do. And I tell you, it was just instant, our like for each other, and the camaraderie, and the timing, you know, because it was a comic scene. And you just certain actors, you see, I didn't know him as a singer, I didn't know him as anything. But it was like that. He was so good an actor. And he doesn't get the credit he deserves as a singer, but he sure doesn't get it as an actor. So playing that scene was so effortless, and it was just like we've been friends for all our lives. And I just remember after doing the master shot, I turned to her and I said, "Can I borrow your hair?" You know, yeah, I can. So anyway, thank you so much. And so I'm really making this long because I'm an old Jewish person, and we don't know how to edit. So anyway, I'll not cut to the chase. So I do the show, I do my scene, everybody thanks me. It's like Shirley's like family, Susan's like family. I just love it, and I haven't got along with anybody. And I left. You know, you think, well, I'll never see these people again as long as I live, but I had a great time. And 2 months later, I get a call from my agent saying they want you to come back and do another show. I said, what do you mean come back and do? I did my scene. I took Laurie out. What else am I going to do? And they said, no. I said, so what, I have to go in and read for it? They said, no, they're just offering it to you. I said, ooh, okay. I said, I'll take it. And that episode was amazing. It was called the Partridge Papers. And we had such a blast doing that episode, so easy to do. Most of my stuff in that episode was with Susan and Shirley. I wasn't with David a lot in that episode. And then, so we did that, and that was fantastic. I mean, that was a big part, and we had fun. And then the next season rolls around, and they call me 2 more times to come in. And I'm starting to feel very schizophrenic, because I'm never playing the same person. I'm Freddie, I'm Marvin, I'm Richard, and then I'm Richard again. And I'm thrilled to it's just great. And then I had done, this really is I'm longer than Johnny right now. So, then I'm getting to the end of this. But then the next year in '73, I did a play at the Mark Paper Forum, which was fun, and literally the week after it closed, they called me again to come back as another character, Howard. And what a joy. I did this play for 3 months at the paper. It was a fantastic play. And then I literally, a week later, was on a boat. Without them, by the way. We got to, Ruth Gillette and I and Bill Zuckert, who were the people in the show, got to cruise up to Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta. I never got off the boat. I was not interested. And then they joined us in Acapulco, and we filmed on the way back. And I'll just tell you a couple of funny things. What is it like, you think, to book a cruise? A lot of people book cruises way in advance, right? And I don't think anybody was told that they were going to be filming this episode of the Partridge that late during their vacation. And there were 2 actors that I knew very well on the boat. They were so mortified to have their vacation. They're away from the business. And it was John Lupton and James Franciscus. I was very interested. And, but that's the episode where we all just became the best of friends and bonded like nobody's business, because we had dinner every night with the captain at the big table, and they were very randy dinners, I will tell you. Randy, I will not go into detail. Read my book. Thanks so much. But it was, and of course, Shirley, if you've read her book, you know she was the randiest of them all. But also, I got to do something really extraordinary on that ship, because they asked if, would you sing a song? I mean, I had been actually singing songs while they were not on the boat. You would get up and play the piano. So Shirley agreed to it, and David agreed to it. And I was the only one who could play the piano. And I'm not that good. So Shirley gets up first, and I'm trying to fake, there's no music. So she said, I'll sing You'll Never Walk Alone. I said, it's wonderful. What? So I sat down, and luckily she said, you can see. So I faked my way through it, and she got through it. And David, I will never forget this. It took me a few years to remember this. But he did the most beautiful version. It was a song I actually could play. It's one of my favorite songs in the world, of When I Fall in Love. And I don't know if he ever sang that on an album, but it's just wonderful. And I had him over for dinner when we got back. And this is one of my favorite things of all time. And my daughter, who was 4 at the time, we didn't tell her it was coming to dinner. And she loved the show, and she loved David Cassidy. So the door knocked at the door. I said, Jennifer, go answer the door. I don't know who that is. Who's that? And she goes, answers the door, and she looks at him, her jaw literally hits the floor, and she runs in her room and slams the door. And that's not coming out for the entire room. Well, David and I became really close at that point, and he would come to my house, I would go to his house in Encino, and we would play music together. And I got very close with Susan at that time, and then that was it. I didn't see them for 40 years. Well, him, still haven't seen Susan. Because she got married in 1975, I got a call on my answering service telling me I was in New York doing something. And the answering service said, you have a message from Susan Day, she's getting married to Lenny Hershman, her agent. I said, it's good. And so, but anyway, I went on to do my stuff. And then just flash forward to when did David do Blood Brothers? 96?
93.
It was 90, no, it couldn't have been 93. No. You did? Well, I was a record producer at that point, and I was doing a lot of cast albums. And the producer of Blood Brothers called me and said, look, Petula Clark is going into the show. Would you record it? Would you do a cast album? I said, Petula Clark, of course, who else is it? David Cassidy. I said, I'm there. Done. Then we'll do it. Don't try to make the deal with David, and we'll see how that goes. And so it was David and Sean. I went to the show several times, planning the album. I went to dinner with Petula, and I didn't see David at that point backstage, but they had a big dinner when they went into the show at Tavern on the Green, and I got invited to that dinner. And I'm standing there, and I don't really know people, so he's literally like South Pacific across a crowded room, and he sees me, and I see him, and he literally, like a shot, comes running over to me and hugs me. I've not seen the guy since 1974. And he says, I have thought about you so much. And that was David. What a memory, what a wonderful wonderful, wonderful, warm. I always tell people I don't know any of the negative stuff. I don't care about the negative stuff. You hear the negative stuff. I never knew that guy. You know the guy who was warm and sweet and supportive. And the album didn't happen. It was just so great to connect with him, and those are my own stories. So thank you for indulging me. Kelli Gruman.
I can go with it for this. I remember when I got the call to audition for David, I was in rehearsals with Barry Manilow. And for the Showstoppers tour, and I'd been in rehearsals for about 2 weeks. And I got a call from the manager, the road manager, who happened to be David's manager, also a very wonderful human being named Victor Bridges. And he told me that Gary Stockdale was the musical director. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to say musical director back then, because it was a band. I didn't even know about that. But Gary and I had worked together many times, and I thought this is awesome because they're looking for a keyboard player. Also, my wife Kelli's played a lot of different acts, and it was wonderful. It worked out great, and evidently saved a lot of money on hotel rooms. But I remember.
You are the best roommate.
Oh, thank you. Which reminds me, when we were on the bus and we were going into Canada, and I remember when Victor said we're at the border, I thought he said, I need a quarter. And I was laying in the bunk and I choked up, and I just cracked my head so hard, and then he was, no, we're in the border. And they didn't want to let in Mr. Bonaduce. Mr. Bonaduce. So I understand that Danny was using my name when he was going into bars and saying he was Matt Gruman. But I never got in any trouble. They let me leave the country. Everything was fine with it. I'm going to just tell you, I'll tell you some stories, and Kelli will chime in too. Just fun stuff. But I don't know how many people are familiar with the Harpo's Victoria, British Columbia incident. Is anybody? Okay, well, that was the incident when we're on stage in this nice little club in Victoria, British Columbia. And we're on a stage that's probably about 6 feet high riser. And we're playing, the set's going great, and I notice there's a guy in the front that's staring up at David like this. And I thought, wow, this guy's really enamored. You know, he's really enjoying the show. And then I'm right next to David, and David says to me, it sounds like, are you strapped? I couldn't make it out. I thought, his strap broke, he needs a new strap. And he said, no, get me a towel. And I looked at it and said, you have a towel right there in front of your monitor, just pick it up. He goes, I split my pants, baby. Nobody knew the story? Okay, so anyway, so I grab the towel and I give it to him, and he turns around for a second, and he tucks it in. It's kind of like some kind of loincloth. It's hanging down there, and he continued doing the show. But these pants were the pants that he was wearing back in the 70s, and they still fit him perfectly. They were leather pants, and they laced up in the front. And evidently, they couldn't handle the job. I mean, because you really understand, they had a pretty huge responsibility. And he finally just gave up and opened up. And whoever that guy was in front, staring up, he has full knowledge of what happened. And so, but I better let Kelli talk.
You're a tough act to follow. It's going to be a challenge, but I'm going to relive a most embarrassing moment for me, and I'm going to relive it again, so now this is going to be in my top 5. Telling this again, I think we had just started rehearsals. It was the first day or second day. We were at Eleanor's Cafe, And it was that time of month, and it was no air conditioning in there.
In Hollywood, right next to the SIR.
Right, in Hollywood on Vine and Santa Monica, in this little hole in the wall, they had great tuna sandwiches. And I started to get really lightheaded, started to pass out. That would happen like every other month. So I finally figured out what was going on. It was a medical issue called, this is so embarrassing for some person.
It was a cyst, it burst.
So instead of being like an appendix attack where you could actually die, it's called sterile fluid. It goes in the abdomen and you go, TMI, I went into shock. And David's going, and I'm laying down in the booth, and he goes, Matt, does she always do this? What's wrong with you? And I was like, I wanted to start out with the best foot forward, and we were ready to go back to rehearsals, and I said, I'll catch up with you. And David said, no, we're not leaving. First few steps out of Eleanor's, and then I'm out. And they carried me all the way to our rehearsal at SIR. What a gentleman. And I'm so thankful that he didn't think that I was like that all the time. So, what a gentleman, and what a, I just had to share that.
I wish you knew the story. I continued to do some shows with David as his musical director, and Jerry was always the first call, but he was always too busy and making that large Hollywood television money. But they always asked him first, But on this one particular thing, we did the Beach Boys 30th anniversary Endless Summer Tour open for him. That was wonderful. And right after that, when he was doing Blood Brothers, I think it was in San Francisco with Petula Clark, he was pitching for a show, the Bobby Darin story, which ended up later being done by Kevin Spacey. Had a big hand in greasing it. But David was doing that, and he called me and asked me if I could arrange this treasure trove of Bobby Darin music in charge for the show. So I did a lot of the rock stuff, and a friend of mine, Harvey Cohen, who arranged a lot of television, did Batman and a lot of Ludwig orchestral arrangement pieces. He did that stuff, the big band stuff. And Sue's other uncle, Sue Schiffer's other uncle, not Lolo, but the other one's name is escaping me. He did some of the big band arrangements too. And we were doing the show at a club in San Francisco called Bimbo's 365. It was just one night only, and I was backing up Petula Clark also, and she had brought her own guitar player. And David really wanted me to do the whole show and back up, make sure that I was the guy that was playing, backing up everybody. And he said to Petula, Pat, I guess he's proper, said, why don't you use my guy? He can do anything. And she ended up using me for the entire show, which it was a really, really cool thing. He was a great guy. I only knew good and gracious times with him, and he was spiritually loyal and just an all-around fantastic human being. I don't want to go over my 12 minutes, but I want to thank Gary Stockdale also.
To sing with David, and this is where we could sing on the mic together pre-COVID, and he would come over. That's such a little strut, and he'd get right in my face. It was, just those memories.
Producer and director, Emmy Award winner, Board of Directors member of the I Think I Love You Animal Foundation, and lifelong David Cassidy fan. Welcome, Michael Pomarico.
I like all of that. I first want to say that if you all want to go see a show that will make you feel as good as the Partridge Family music made you feel, please go see the Cowsills. So thank you all to all the organizers of this event. It's truly an honor for me to be here today. I heard David say many times in interviews, it's about the work and not about him. As a television director, I always appreciate a great actor's performance. I have the utmost respect for David's abilities as an actor. He always made good acting choices in the parts he played, comedic or dramatic. I know he had the respect of those other talented actors he shared the stage with and the small screen, including the multi-talented Kimmel. I was fortunate to see David on Broadway in Joseph the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and Blood Brothers. I attended each multiple times. His performances were always consistently good. Blood Brothers, as you know, is a very emotional piece. I spoke to David backstage after one of the shows I attended, and what struck me was how drained, I think it was said already about when he came on stage singing, but he looked so drained and he sounded so quiet. And clearly he left it all on the stage moments before. Like so many other dramatic actors, he did this on Broadway, 8 shows a week, week after week. His vocals on all his recordings are second to none. He truly had a remarkable voice, and he made wonderful, great records. After David passed away, I reread his autobiography, Could It Be Forever? And there's a section in the book where he talks about his love for the 60s rock band, the Young Rascals. David gives high praise to the 2 Rascal vocalists, Phyllis Cavallari and Eddie Brigada. Felix and Eddie are also the writers of all the Rascal recordings, including Lonely Too Long and How Can I Be Sure, both of which David recorded. Felix wrote the music, Eddie wrote the lyrics. Eddie is a personal friend of mine, and I showed Eddie the passage in the book where David praises both Felix and Eddie as vocalists, and he calls them the Mario Lanza of their time. Now, Mario is considered a great American tenor in the 1940s and 50s. Eddie was stunned, and he said to me, wow, I wish I had the opportunity to thank him for that. And then he went on to say he was pretty sure David's version of How Can I Be Sure sold more copies than the Rascals' own version, which Eddie sang lead on. From the UK to Broadway, here in Las Vegas and places in between, David always put everything into his work, and he made each project his own. After he revamped EFX in 1996, it was not only named Best Show here in Las Vegas, but David was named Best Performer in Las Vegas. David was totally a triple threat, excelling in television, theater, and music. In 1998, prior to his morning appearance on ABC TV's The View, I watched David rehearse 2 songs he would perform live on the air that day. Between rehearsals, I listened as David discussed guitars, amps, and other types of equipment with the other musicians on the set. David really knew his technical stuff. He really knew what he was talking about. He didn't just strap on a guitar and sing. He knew all the ins and outs of what he was doing, and he was an all-around musician, like all these wonderful musicians that you've heard from here today. Celebrating David Cassidy as an all-around worldwide entertainer is long overdue. And today we've taken another step in that recognition, a step in cementing his legacy for future generations to discover and appreciate. Congratulations, David Cassidy. Today you join entertainers such as Sammy Davis Jr., Bobby Darin, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, and Elvis. Just to name a few who have left their mark here in Las Vegas and around the world. David, you were 100% correct. It's about the work, and you did great work.